everybody. Welcome back to another update on the Charlie Kirk assassination. We got a lot to unpack today. We have Gary Melton from Paramount Tactical. Gary and his team, or at least Gary and a couple of his buddies, went over to the UVU University with some surveillance drones, and they mapped out the entire area. And I'm super excited to have Gary come up here and unpack that. So I'm going to jump right into it while we wait for Maze. Gary's just joining us. Gary, how you doing, buddy? I know you're just getting back from Utah. There's a little mute button. Yeah, there you go. I think you found it.
Yep, I got it, man. No, hey, thanks for having me on. It was a good trip. It was very interesting, to say the least.
So can you fill us in on these drones, these surveillance drones? If I'm understanding that right, those are like the 3D rendering modeling drones where they surveil the whole area and they map out everything, and you can see the heights of the building, locations, areas where there may or may not have been a potential second shooter.
Yeah, so the drone that we use, we're going to have a resolution of down to about 1 to 1.5 centimeters when we make that 3D model. And so, and we did the entire area, almost the entire campus, well beyond just obviously just the courtyard and the amphitheater. And that's what I want to do. I want to make sure that we can get that out to everybody. Whether you believe it was drones from the skies or palm guns or whatever else you believe in, we're going to put that out. People can test their theories. Other people can see what works, what doesn't work, what's plausible, what's not. And they'll have it, they'll access it, and kind of take it from there.
And Gary, why don't you fill us in a little bit? And hey, when I start speaking or somebody else speaks, if you could just mute your mic because it'll come back, the echo will kind of come back in. Yeah, there we go. So can you give us a little background on who you are? I want the audience to kind of understand, your level of expertise when it comes to things like this, especially firearms and training. Can you give us a little background on yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So 9/11 happened. A couple days later, I was in the recruiting station. Ended up at the 101st, was a sniper team leader during the initial push into Iraq. Came back after that, went to selection, went to the 1st Special Forces Group. I was an 18 Bravo weapons sergeant. I did 3 more combat tours, multiple training tours. I ended up getting out off of active duty at the end of 2011. I did another year at 20th Special Forces Group, a guard unit. Took a job for Department of State Diplomatic Security. I was a special tactics instructor teaching high threat teams that were going overseas, and did that for a couple of years. Later on became a unit chief teaching surveillance detection. Somewhere in there I got bored with it, opened up Paramount Tactical, where I wanted to bring training to not only law enforcement and military but also the civilians. I think that's really important. And that was 2014. Our first training season was 2015, and we've just kind of been going strong ever since.
Man, it's so refreshing to have somebody with your caliber of your expertise, paying attention to this investigation. I think a majority of us are under the assumption that it wasn't some lone trans shooter on the roof and the FBI and our government's hiding something. And I think that, everybody, including myself, I think has been wondering, was there any other clear line of sight of any other location, specifically the computer science building? So just out of when you were there without getting the actual drone footage, were you able to get up on any roofs? Were you able to see any other locations that there potentially could have been a second shooter? Or is there any areas that you think that a second shooter could have been? Or I shouldn't say a second shooter, I should say the actual shooter or a second person or however you want to say it.
Yeah, so that's one of the things I definitely wanted to explore while I was there. I think, to me, it was a little surreal being there. Because again, just like many people out there, I've poured literally it's got to be over 100 hours just looking at video footage, looking at Google Earth. Like, I know the distances from different structures to Charlie Kirk inside and out, and you know that, and you realize that in your mind, but your perception, at least my perception when I got there, was very different. Everything there is so much more compact and so much closer that some of the things that I would consider plausible, I think if people were standing there on site, and some of the other things that I think that people have suggested sure does seem a lot less plausible. With that being said, I do think the computer science building, was one that I think is absolutely plausible. And then off to the left, I don't think we have any real indication from Charlie's basically his 9 o'clock. There's another brick structure on a building, probably about 250 some change yards away that I think is also, if we're talking about a shooting event, ballistic event from a distance, those two seem the most plausible to me. If we're, if you want to go down that route.
Okay, and then as far as rounds go, are you pretty convinced that this was a shot from the front? I know Candace says that she's like, I'm 100% positive, bullet shoot straight. The shot was from the front. It was an entry wound. Are we still on this? Are we still on that same page that we think that's an entry wound? And if so, what type of caliber is that? I've also heard people say that it could have been some type of compressed 22, would have left a little bit bigger of an entry round. What is your thought process on what type of weapon was used if that was a gunshot?
Yeah, so, that's one of the things that, everything indicates to me. When you look at that video, when you look at, multiple perspectives, and even the video that you can see from his side where you can see the energy transfer basically through him, and you see it from the front, man, it's hard to get away from the idea that that round didn't come from the front. Everything in there indicates to me. There's nothing there that we can say that definitely came from the Wassey building or from Tyler, but I do think that just from the physics involved, you're basically looking at a very narrow window, angular window from essentially his 12 o'clock, plus or minus. So, that's what it looks like to me. I've tried to look at it and entertain every other possibility. But when you see that energy transfer, to me, physics don't lie. Now, with that being said, there's a lot of other people that were watching the same thing and they interpret that event completely differently. And, I think if people are sincere about finding the truth with this, you definitely have to set ego aside and make some room for disagreements on this. And I think that's been one of the biggest problems in this entire thing. There's certain people out there that the moment that you disagree with them or challenge them on any of this stuff, they're going to start attacking you personally. They're trying to undermine you. It's like, it's just silly nonsense. And unfortunately, this space is filled with a bunch of toxic people. And if people are sincere, you got to entertain different, and that's what I've done. There's lots of people out there with lots of different theories I disagree with. I've had them on my show. I want to be able to present their perspective to everybody. And, ultimately the information, some of the other information we're gonna find out. I think once some of it, we're just gonna have to wait till the trial. I think that's a reality that we all have to contend with. But yeah, I think as many people out there that can give their perspective, and there's lots of people out there with different expertise and experience in different fields that can contribute to this. And I think the more that we have a collaborative effort, regardless if you're doing it with someone you disagree with or not, I think that's how we end up with the most solid set of information that we possibly can.
Gary, Sam Parker here. Thanks for coming onto the space. Appreciate it. Just out of curiosity, are you still in Utah?
Landed here in Dallas. I'm headed to West Virginia right now. I'm in the car.
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed your stay. It's where I go. Found to be several theories and avenues of information that turn out to be nothing. And that's just going to happen, right? We have to be willing to be wrong about things. We see things, we think it's maybe something, and then people investigate it. We investigate it, and we learn, well, maybe it's not something. Or maybe we dismiss something at first thinking it's nothing, and then it turns out, well, maybe it is something. And so I think
that wasn't around. Uh-oh.
not everybody is going to be right about everything every time, right? So that's such a good approach that you're taking. But I wanted to ask you, when you were at UVU campus, because I'm going somewhere with this, did you talk to any of the students there? Did you try to conduct any interviews or find out anything from any eyewitnesses? Did anybody talk to you regarding the event? What was your experience along those lines?
Yeah, so I ended up talking to several students and ultimately several attendees there. I actually got a pretty good Pretty good. I think probably one of the most important interviews with a gentleman named Henry Dell. If anybody doesn't know him, Henry Dell was actually the first person to ask Charlie Kirk a question, and it was related to religion. And he was literally 15 feet from Charlie Kirk when he was killed. And I think his perspective especially was extremely informative and extremely interesting. So yeah, I talked to him. I talked to about 3 other people that were there at the event. They didn't want to go on the record, but I was just asking them, what did you experience? What did you hear? What did you see? What do you think? And interesting enough, the answers were kind of all over the place. So I think that environment, especially, and even being there, it's like the acoustics are odd, and that's without having a PA system there. So it was interesting to see that, just these people that just happen to be there, they're revisiting. Some of them were students, and hearing their different perspectives of what took place painted it painted a picture that we don't have a very clear picture, even with people there on the ground, to be quite
Gary,
honest.
did they say why they didn't want to go on the record? Did they tell you why, or they just declined?
I didn't push that. No, I won't. I can speculate, but it'd be just that. There was. I think this is what I've seen is, and you guys tell me if you agree or disagree, but once we get some of these people into the limelight of this, and they're just trying to tell their side of the story, weird things happen. And I can definitely understand, for instance, this is a great example. Somebody sent me some video the other day, and I released it right away. And I didn't even look at it yet. I was just like, hey, I got new video, haven't seen it before, just kind of scanned through it real quick. I released it. And then, there was a comment, something to the effect of, why hasn't this person released this already? It's been a month. Like, what are they doing? Like, who is this person? So there is this fear of people coming forward where they're going to be attacked, or like, it gets a little weird, I think. And again, that wasn't voiced, but I definitely, I got that impression from every single person. Like, oh no, I don't want to get involved.
Yeah, that's what I kind of found odd. I mean, I understand it now in, this far out, there's been so much uproar and hoopla. Like, I can understand perhaps now why somebody might not want to, let their face or their name be known, perhaps. But there were thousands of people there, perhaps hundreds, maybe thousands of cameras. And I just feel like there are precious few first-person testimonials in this social media clout-driven generation, especially amongst the youth. There just seems to be a massive dearth of first-person content and testimonial from people there that day. And I'm just wondering, were there people going around? Were the police officers, was law enforcement, were they telling people to not say anything, to not share content, to keep quiet in order to aid that this would help aid the investigation? I mean, was there anything like this going on? I'm not saying there was. I don't know if there was. I'm just speculating as to how is it that you muzzle thousands of people in this social media, narcissistic, clout-driven era that we're in, where everybody's got the phone up, everybody's there, there's thousands of them. Where are they? Where are their videos? Where are their testimonials? Where are their, I was there, like, here's what I saw. Like, where is all that stuff? Where are they?
I know that's kind of a rhetorical question. Look, it's my belief that the video and the evidence and the information that we have are the scraps. I think we have the least important, the least illustrative bits of video available to us. And I think everybody out there that had any sort of video that showed what actually happened, I mean, of course they're going to actually contact the police, and I don't know if there's a gag order. I don't know what else, all that speculation, but I think there's an element to that, right? I think any video that was actually evidentiary, I think, I don't think it's out and about. So, that's kind of my thought process on it.
I mean, that's why I asked you if they had, when those people declined, if maybe they had mentioned something that would maybe lead you to think something along these lines, perhaps, because that's all I could think of was that, like, okay, if I'm there and I'm a witness and I have video, I'm going to contact law enforcement, and then maybe law enforcement is going to tell me, be sure you don't say anything or share this with anybody, because we don't want to ruin the case against Charlie's killer. And I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking in my head. So that's why I was wondering if it's not.
No, I think that's a given. I mean, anybody that's going to come forward that has video evidence of what took place, that, I mean, number one, they are now an eyewitness. They're probably going to be called to testify, because they're going to have to verify if that video is going to be played in court. The person that took that video is like, okay, where were you? They're going to get deposed by the defense as well. So I think that is just a pretty common sense assumption on that. Now, what I did ask every single person, I was like, hey, do you have video from that day? And there was a couple people that had like some very short clips, 20 minutes before Charlie came out. Now, what I will say is I have gotten the original from, we've seen his footage. The gentleman that, Dell, the second speaker, we've actually seen his footage, but I asked him to send me the original from his phone, and he has sent that to me. He uploaded it to a Google mailbox, and I haven't downloaded that yet. It was a couple of gigabytes, but I am going to go through that when I get home for sure, and I'm going to put that out as well.
Because we all saw that TPUSA student, remember, the day of, like when he was like saying what happened, and then this person, I think it was a Connor or somebody or other, somebody jumped in front of him, some TPUSA employee or somebody working the event literally jumped in front of him and body blocked him from the camera and told him to shut up and stop talking and, saying what he saw. I don't know if you saw that footage.
No, you're talking about the Bartholomew footage. Yeah, I saw it.
No, does that come from the Bartholomew footage where there's the student testifying and then this guy jumps and say, hey, that's like really weird. And so I'm like wondering how much of that spirit of that was going on by, like, who even was that? Not sure we know the full story behind that, but.
So I've heard they were part of the TPUSA, and this is unverified, so take it as a grain of salt. I heard they were part of the TPUSA chapter at that school, that they weren't, part of the inner circle of TPUSA or anything like that. That's what I heard. I don't know if that's true or not. So that's what I've heard on that.
Gotcha.
And but I want to jump back to that, what you were saying there about the physics of the shot, because I think, every time that I've watched that video personally, I've been pretty confident to say that is exactly where that shot came from. I don't know how you would get a body to react that way when you're being shot in any direction. It was almost like he was thrown back in his chair, and you see his body recoil. It recoils as the bullet's traveling through him to the front. I was asking you about the round. What type of round? Were you ever able to confirm, or what type of round do you think would be able to do that and leave that type of mark on him?
So that's where I think things get weird, right? I mean, to me, the biggest mystery of all this is the ballistics. There's no doubt about it. And when people start suggesting smaller caliber rounds, like the energy dump, the energy transfer that we see is not a smaller caliber round. It's just not. And especially hitting in the neck, like, especially veterans out there, like I've seen guys hit with 30 caliber rounds, 223, 7.62 by 39. Like what we see is a very energetic event. And and from the beginning, and for people that aren't familiar with my work, one of the first things I said, what it looked like, was that he was actually wearing a vest. And there's some weird things that I'll just say, like a ballistic protection, to me, answers a lot of questions that no other suggestion so far has. Now, I will tell you, I was with Steve Gardner yesterday. And we were talking about this whole thing, and he literally texted Andrew Covelt about that specifically. Andrew claims that he was not wearing any sort of ballistic protection. So if you throw that out, and again, once you start, and I've played this ad nauseum and talked about it in our live streams, and I'll probably talk about it tonight. We'll be doing a live stream tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern time. But one of the things is, even when I was ready to let that go completely and try to come up with another explanation, but then some of that footage came out where you see him from the side, and you see like this big, you see something project from the back of his neck, and then like you see structure in his t-shirt that you really can't explain any other way, that looks like it's a low profile ballistic protection. Again, with the information that I have, that's just me interpreting the footage, and that is, speculation. But once we get out of that, if we have some sort of ballistic protection where now that if it's a frangible 30-06 round, a 30 caliber round, what I always thought from the beginning, what it looked like to me was that it hit lower, just around his collarbone, and it looked like it deflected upward. Now, you could have even level 3A, very low profile body armor. And here's the problem. I think a lot of people think about body armor and they're still thinking like 2005. Folks, there's extremely thin, and this is the commercial stuff. And there are, I won't say body armor, because I think there's some semantic weird things that go on with that. But there's ballistic protection and or vests where you can have extremely thin, extremely capable, not necessarily against rifle rounds, but extremely thin, 0.19 inch thick, that you can actually wear in a compression shirt and it be extremely low profile and extremely hard to detect. And if you had a frangible round hit that body, that ballistic protection, and we have either some of it fragment and go up toward and make a very strange, irregular, anomalous entry wound in his neck, because it is, and then maybe even a portion of it could go through that vest and end up at his T1 in that, because that's right around the area where you'd see where you'd have the T1 spinal as well. So that to me kind of explains it. And what's weird too is when you see Charlie hit, it looks like it hits his chest, and then we see that energy transfer, and there is a point where his head gets thrown back, and he actually gets almost lifted out of his chair, like his whole body goes upward. So, that just from that alone, I was like, it skipped off his chest one way or the other.
Now, how do you?
Now, if that's not. Go ahead.
How do you explain the reaction of that shirt? I mean, there was clearly something. Blake Bednards was in here. He got the video, the first 4K video that was from an actual 4K high-end Sony camera. When we zoom in there, and you can clearly see a cloud of smoke of something that is detonating under that shirt, whether that was just maybe his mic exploding. His necklace clearly blows off in that direction. You can see part of his cross getting kind of blown off would be his left, if he's sitting in the chair, Charlie's actual left side. The cross kind of comes up out of his shirt there. What are we sure that there wasn't something that was detonating under that shirt that caused his body to kind of have that? And I'm not saying something like like an explosive device that shot a projectile into his neck. I'm talking maybe like some type of advanced heart attack device, or something that would have detonated like right in front of that microphone to give you the sound effect of, some type of rifle round or something like that. Have we cleared that out of the way, or what's your thought on what happened under that shirt?
I mean, I can't say sure of anything, but I mean, that's not my interpretation of that, right? So at the end of the day, you still have physics to deal with, and you have an equal and opposite reaction. So if we're talking about an explosive device, I know a lot of people have talked about the pagers that Israel used to target terrorists, or we'll just say their enemies, because I know that even that's controversial, right? And you actually have proximal damage when you see that. If it was an explosive device, I'll just address that, and we can kind of go down the line of alternate theories on that. If it was an explosive device, all right, we would see, number one, that black magnet wouldn't stay there. That would be gone. That would be projected immediately out toward the crowd. We would have, his shirt would be in tatters. Again, you got equal and opposite reaction. You can direct explosive forces. Like, I've done a lot of breaching, handled explosives. Like, I have a lot of experience in that, and you can direct the explosive, but you still can't get away from the equal and opposite reaction of that, whatever that is. If it's projecting something forward or propelling something forward, it's got to go rearward. And, you know, to me, that white blur, it looks nothing like smoke. It doesn't look like smoke to me. When I saw that, my interpretation, and again, this could be my own personal confirmation bias, right? To me, that looked like his outer shirt was being pulled down, and we saw motion blur of a compression undershirt. I've talked to Blake at length about what he believes. And look, Blake is a credible, smart, intelligent guy. I disagree with his take on it, but I mean, we don't know enough. I don't know enough to be able to say, like, hey, that isn't possible. That isn't what happened. I mean, one of the problems that I do have is that, and this is extremely, like, I don't know of a way to fake this. We have a supersonic event, right? So we have a gun goes off, and then we have multiple devices in line with that trajectory where we know that there is a supersonic projectile because we have a boom and we have multiple cracks that you can track. So a supersonic event took place, and I'm having a hard time understanding what the motive would be, where we have this device on him, we kill him with that, but yet we still have a patsy that we definitely shot a projectile somewhere at supersonic speeds. Like, that's pretty tough to fake, in my opinion.
Can you explain when you say supersonic? I think myself and a lot of our audience doesn't understand what that actually means. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so, you know, obviously when we shoot a projectile, if it's subsonic and we're using a suppress, it's much quieter. Like, no matter, when you suppress a rifle, you're suppressing the initial report. Even if I can get rid of the big boom that goes off at the rifle, we still have this projectile that is breaking the speed of sound. And it's going to be cracking. If you're near it, you're going to hear a loud crack. And so whether you're doing audio telemetry on this event or Butler or whatever else, what they're tracking is we have the boom, and then we have a known microphone, a cell phone somewhere. And as it passes that cell phone, it's also picking the boom and the crack. And so, number one, there's multiple ways that we can actually track a general idea of the trajectory. So because that crack is going to happen fairly close to that microphone. So, you know, if there's a guy way off to the left and that supersonic projectile doesn't go near him, he'll hear the boom, but his microphone won't pick up the crack. So we can do a couple things with that. Based on the time gap between the boom and the crack, we can get a fairly close muzzle or velocity, right? So we can tell how fast that projectile is going. We can, with multiple microphones, we can now kind of track the trajectory of that round. And we can definitely say, hey, it passed by this person, it passed by this person, it passed by this person, just doing the audio analysis. It's not as precise as a lot of people would like to say it is, but it gives us a good idea of what's going on. And without a doubt, there was a supersonic event. So we had a projectile that was supersonic. And that is pretty difficult to fake. And then if we have that, then why would we go through? That's what I always try to work out in my mind. Like, what's the motive here? If we have this guy over here, and then we have this, because if I'm trying to set up a patsy, ideally what I would plan an operation is like, okay, I'm going to put the patsy over here. I'm going to put the real shooter. We got to have a similar trajectory, because the last thing that you want to do is create your patsy, but then have a contradictory trajectory. Like, I'm not going to shoot the guy from an oblique from the 4 o'clock when I have the patsy that I want to take the fall at the 12 o'clock. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. So when we start going into an explosive device, and however you want to describe it, some other device that kills Charlie that is attached to his body, I have a hard time trying to reconcile the purpose of the patsy. Is it just in the moment so that the people in charge can get away, or are we trying to cover up this crime permanently? Because that doesn't do it. Doesn't seem like that does it, if that's what we're trying to do.
And go ahead.
Gary,
that makes sense.
Gary, I wanted to get your opinion on from your expertise on ballistics as well. To me, this looks, just to be upfront with everybody, and I think most people who've been following this know that I feel this way. But I believe that the crime scene was destroyed on purpose. It's a pattern that we see in high-profile assassinations. The JFK assassination, they destroyed the crime scene quickly. In the RFK assassination, they also destroyed the crime scene, and in the Martin Luther King assassination, like literally within hours, they destroyed the crime scene. And in Charlie's case, they ripped up the sod and paved it over, like just quickly within a couple days. And that was immediately suspicious to me. Now, just in your expertise, what kind of trace evidence, if it were only rifle shots, so let's do two things. If it were only rifle shots from a distance, what kind of trace evidence might they be covering up? And, you know, because where I'm going with this is like, I'm not sure if there was an explosive. I'm not sure what the role of an explosive would be, but I'm struggling to understand what kind of trace evidence might be covered up other than perhaps the presence of a local explosive. So what's your comment on that? What kind of trace from a distant rifle shot could be left behind that they might be trying to cover up?
You know, I mean, there's just not going to be that much. You know, it would be a little different if we had an exit wound. Obviously, they could be trying to locate and obscure a projectile. Other than that, I mean, you know, outside of some of these alternative theories, if we're talking about 1 shooter, 2 shooters, 10 shooters, like I don't know what they're going to. Now, that was one of the questions that I wanted answered when I got there. And what I will say, and I talked to law enforcement, and of course we also have some timelines too. Anyone out there, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but as I understand it, they started the renovation of that area October 14th. Now, what I did confirm with the local law enforcement there is that they were actually guarding that area for 3 days. So the FBI, Utah authorities were processing that area where Charlie was, and it was locked down. I hadn't heard this, but there was a guy that broke in. Apparently, he was wearing scrubs, and from what I understood, it was only reported in the local news. But there was a guy that snuck in there and was trying to, I don't know, take pictures or something along those lines.
Yes, I can confirm that 100%. And he had a rifle on him too when he got caught, right?
That I don't know. I didn't hear that part. Stephen Gardner was relaying that information to me. So there was a guy that did try. He was in scrubs. He got arrested. But the reality is that scene was locked down for 3 days, and I'm not sure how long people expect the crime scene to be, quote unquote, a crime scene. So, and I understand. Look, I do think it looks suspicious. I think there's some reasonable answers as to why they would renovate that area the way that they did. There was clearly a lot of blood on there. They had to pull up some of the sod, and so, you know, I think there's some reasonable answers.
Well, I think what people are, I'll tell you what I find suspicious. Their excuse for, first of all, it happened within, I think, just a couple or 3 days. And I think that the work commenced on a Sunday morning, which I don't know if you were in Utah long enough to know this, but this is like the heart of Utah County. It's the heart of Mormon country. And on Sundays, like even gas stations and grocery stores, some gas stations are closed. You can't get gas on Sunday there. Like you gotta, and here we have a situation where they're saying they said that this was scheduled construction that had been scheduled for this renovation. And they started it on Sunday morning. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but like scheduled renovations usually start Monday morning in Utah County. They don't start Sunday morning. It's a little odd. And that they're, you know, and that their reasoning was that, well, this was already scheduled to be done. So that's what I find odd. And, you know, 3 days, is it long enough? Is it not long enough? I don't know. It seems like the high profile assassination. I mean, maybe you don't rip it down in 3 days. I don't know. It just seems, it's hard to, especially when they said, well, this was scheduled. It wasn't well, we need to take care of this because there's blood on the ground. No, this was scheduled. And we scheduled it for Sunday morning, unlike, you know, other things. And, I don't know. It just seems a little off, you know, that they would, for such a high profile assassination, that 3 days is plenty of time. We don't need any more time. We're not going to come back. We're not going to do a second look. We're not going to need a, I don't know. That's what I'm struggling with here. It seems a little off. Just seems a little odd.
And hey, Blake, I know Blake wanted to piggyback off that too. It looked like he had his hand up right when he was talking about the mic. Blake, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, Gary, glad you're home, man, and you're safe.
Hey, thanks, buddy.
You bet. Hey, real quick, wanted to hit on the acoustics, man. Did you do any tests, like run through that? Like, what's your thoughts on acoustics down there at the actual tent location, and then back up on top of any of the structures you were able to? Like, run through that for us.
Yeah, so there was no testing that we were able to do. Look, we immediately on campus. It would have been nice if they would have had as much law enforcement presence during that event as they do now. Immediately on campus, we basically took the route up to the top, right there where you have access to the roof, and we were up there. I don't know, 10 minutes, and we decided we were going to go ahead and launch the drone. That was priority number one. It was a great spot to launch it from. So we got that drone up in the air and started doing the scan. And then, I don't know, within 10 minutes of us being there, a law enforcement officer came up and was like, hey, the school doesn't want you guys flying a drone. And I explained to him, hey, look, the school doesn't own the airspace. This is FAA. There's nothing they can really do to stop us. You can talk to the friend of mine. He owns the company. He's a professional. That's what he does. He does surveys, drone surveys for construction companies and a host of other things. I was like, he can tell you what's going on. Well, while they obviously can't really stop us from, they thought they could, right? They're like, no, like, essentially they're basically like, hey, we own the airspace. Long story short, we pulled the drone down. We tried to go fill out some paperwork for liability. That's kind of what they were talking about. We were trying to play the game, be nice guests. And it was just a bureaucratic nonsense is what it came down to. So from the moment we were there, they had eyes on us. The officer that I met, he knew exactly who I was. And I explained to him, like, hey, look, man, this is who I am. He's the guy that actually watch your content. And I also let him know, and this is true, I called the school multiple times. And I tried to get a hold of somebody, like, let them know what we were doing, what we, just, hey, I want to be courteous. Maybe we can get a liaison, all those things. So there wasn't a whole lot of outside of taking pictures. They let us know, like, hey, look, you can walk around, you can take pictures, you can do what you need to do. But so there was that whole aspect of it. Now, what I did find interesting is Henry Dell. He was to Charlie's left near the water feature. As a matter of fact, if you guys look at the footage, there is a PVC pipe, and he said he was standing right next to that PVC pipe. It was about 15, 20 at most from Charlie. When I asked him about what you hear when the gun went off, and he's like, I heard the gun go off. He's like, to me, it didn't sound like a 30-06. It sounded like a 223 AR-15, something along those lines. It's like, okay, that's interesting. And then I talked to another person, and he was on to Charlie's right. And I was asking him about, that was one of the questions, like, what'd you hear? What was your experience with this? And he was like, man, it sounded like a 30 caliber rifle. This was the guy who was a hunter too. He's like, it sounded. So like, even right there, we have a discrepancy in perception. And the more I thought about it, and I'm not a audiologist or whatever, but what I will say, when I was as close as I could get to where Charlie was and looking up in that direction, whether that shot came from Tyler, either way, I think most of us would agree there was some sort of boom that came from that gun. And the thing that I was thinking, because of the way the edge of that roof comes over, and then the rest of the building is, I'm looking up from Charlie's position to the left, you can barely see where the rifle was. And then you have a lot of structures between that area. And where Henry was standing further to Charlie's left, like there was a less, not even a line of sight, but there was more obstructions in the way to deflect sound. Whereas if you were over to Charlie's right, on the right side of that, there was less obstruction to sound. And I think that that perception would be very different given those different perspectives and the clear open area, because it's much more open to the right. It's much less open. And basically there's no direct path for the sound to get to the people on the left. I will also say one of the things I found interesting about Adam Bartholomew's video was that his audio, and of course he had a much better microphone and things like that. His audio was the first audio that I heard that sounded like a 30 caliber rifle going off. Everything else, and of course there's like, I film gun reviews for a living. And I've done a lot of filming on like iPhones and things like that. And I will say that, you know, when you're filming a rifle, there's almost no way to tell from the audio signature what caliber a rifle is from an iPhone. With the better mics, you can get a much better, you know, they have a much better dynamic range for sound. So I think those two things. And the other thing I was thinking about while I was there, that I hadn't really thought about before, because, you know, there was people talking about how they heard actually 2 shots. But then we have audio. I don't know if anyone would disagree with me in saying that in any of the audio that we have where we hear 2 shots, you hear echoes. But the other thing I thought about was that audio from that shot, besides it just echoing all over that place, it's actually going to retransmit through Charlie's handheld mic as well. But I don't know if I answered your question, Blake, but I know it's kind of all over the place. But that was, I thought about the audio a lot while I was there. And while I didn't get to do any testing, that was on my piece out.
And how does that, I got a question about the audio as well. How does that play into like how we heard everything, or how the cameras and everything would have heard it when you technically had the speakers and the microphone? Does that change everything when you think about the audio going into that microphone and then being kind of blasted throughout those speakers as well?
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, that microphone picked up that shot and then retransmitted it through the PA system. So it definitely probably makes the whole more. But I think the biggest, just going back to what I said earlier, I think the biggest thing that influenced people's perception of sound is
I think I'm not the only one that lost him. I think Gary's breaking up on us.
Yeah, I can't hear him either.
And just to give everybody
Gary,
heads
if you
up,
can hear us.
Go ahead, sir.
I was just going to say, Gary, if you can hear us, we can't hear you. So if you can get into a spot with better signal, or if you just need to reboot your app, we can bring you back up again. And by the way, Ryan, since I am talking now, I have to leave in a couple minutes. I have to go guest host a podcast. I'm not going to be able to stay till 3. Just to let you know, I'm going to have to drop off there.
Hey, no worries, brother. We're going to wrap it at 6 today. We're going to keep this one, the 5 to 6 p.m. show. I got a bunch of stuff I got to do too. Hey, there he is. Gary's back. Hey, what's up, brother? Sorry, you broke off there right when you were saying, you know what's interesting, or something like that. You had broke up right then and there.
Sorry, I must have hit a bad cell service. So I think basically what I said was, I think where you were in that area and whether or not you had a direct line of audio to that shot is going to have the greatest impact on your perception of how it sounded.
Thank you, brother. And hey, I want you to tell everybody, what time is your show, how often you're doing your shows. I want everybody to make sure everybody's following you, because it's very rare that we have people like yourself that are willing to go to the lengths that you've went to stay on top of this investigation. I thought when you were just watch your first video, I thought you were just going to be a ballistics guy. You're going to give your opinion on it and move on. And you've really stuck on this, and you've gone above and beyond way more than most people have. So I want to make sure everybody's following you guys and giving you the biggest promotion I can. So tell us about your shows and where everybody can follow you at. You're going live tonight too, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct. So, we've been doing a live podcast every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time for forever. And we cover a multitude of usually politics and current events, things like that. And we definitely get into some gun things as well. But we will be doing that live tonight. I'm going to share some footage with everybody on that. We'll be taking questions and reading your comments. And then, of course, Paramount Tactical on YouTube. You guys see us here on X and, of course, Instagram. We do some stuff on Facebook, but mainly our YouTube channel is where we're most active.
Awesome, brother. And I see Jordan's up here, brother. Good to see you, Jordan Daly. Haven't heard from you in a while, my friend. Does anybody else up here have a question for Gary before we kind of wind the space down? Maze, what about you? Did you want to jump in here and say anything? We can't hear you, Maze, if you're talking.
While we're waiting for Mace to get that sorted, Gary, would you be willing to come back or have an offline discussion? There's another set of circumstances about this that I want to explore with you due to your tactical training. Has nothing to do with what we've been talking about today, and it's too late in the game today to talk about it. Would you be willing to come back, I don't know, tomorrow or Friday, or have a conversation with me offline to discuss that?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do an offline discussion. Let's talk about it. I got a pretty full schedule tomorrow.
Okay.
Friday, we might be able to make something happen. But if you want to contact me offline this evening, we can discuss it and kind of go from there, Sam.
Okay, I'll DM you. Look for my DM.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
And we got Maze. Let's bring Maze back up here really quick. And Blake, I believe, Blake, are you headed? Are you going to do some investigation stuff too?
No, I'm not going to set foot in Utah. I'm going to be down here in
like
Texas.
this kind here. Stay. Utah's full, Blake. Stay out.
Oh, Sam, that's good stuff. No, I am not. I crazy enough had some work come to me today. Check my page, everyone. The mystery spy jet. I've been on since the beginning. That just really I was just scratching my head at because it made absolutely no sense. Candace has since began sort of talking about it over the last, last week. But lo and behold, I'm sitting at my desk. I just got off a Zoom meeting and I get notified that the plane is, it was active, and then I touched the route and sure enough, it was here in Lubbock. So I jumped in my pickup and hauled ass to the airport, and that beautiful Bombardier Global 6500 was sitting right there at Millionaire Air, which is where all the charters and private jets, where basically we fill up our planes. And so got some good video and finally got to see who is flying that jet. So it is definitely military. Whether they're training, what's inside of it, do not know. But it's very curious to say the least. Other than that.
All right, I'm getting bored of that. It was almost over anyway. They were just gonna talk shit for a little bit and close out the space. If you missed any of it, you can go back and listen. We'll check this space out and see what the hell they're talking about. Sometimes they have good speakers. Sometimes they're crazy and full of shit.
What does it look like? Yeah, I mean, like you said, obviously it's going to be, we think dogfights with planes and all this stuff, but it's just, and now this censorship shit at the Pentagon, I don't know. I really don't. All I know is that it's not going to be like in the 70s or whatever, where you could go out and protest and stuff, because you got fucking cameras in every corner, and you got just 24/7 surveillance with.
Fucking spaces are gonna be retarded again. Alright, well, I'm just gonna shut this one down. There a few of y'all in here, sorry if y'all were into that. You can go on this dude. That's who's holding the space on X right now. I'm gonna shut it down, man. Y'all have a good night.